Okay, we're rolling.
Okay, good evening, everybody. This is Councilor Bill Solms, and I'm calling this regular meeting of the Ledyard Town Council Finance Committee to order. Present are myself, Councilor Ingalls, Councilor Ryan as members of the committee, also Councilors McGrattan and Rodriguez, the mayor, business manager Rachel Mosier, Superintendent Hartling, Assistant Finance Director and Treasurer Ian Stammel, Finance Director Matthew Bonin. Who did I miss?
Wayne Donaldson.
Oh, Mike. Yeah, Wayne Donaldson from the Board of Ed and Mike Bronner from the Finance Committee and the Board of Ed side. So welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We're going to start with new business because we have a number of people here and I don't want to have them sit around watching us conduct old business at length. So we'll start with new. Chief Rich is first up, but he's not with us yet. So we're going to start with item 2 if he's not here by then. But before we get to that, I will ask for citizens' comments if there are any. And hearing none, we have informational items. You'll notice 4 emails from residents regarding the ARPA session that we had at the beginning of the month of February. And with that, I would accept a motion to review and approve the prior meeting minutes.
So moved, Councilor Ingalls.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'm sorry, second, Councilor Ryan. I was looking at
Thank you.
something.
I think
And
here
how did
comes
they look
Chief.
for everybody? Any comments, corrections?
No.
Nope.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye, Councilor Ingalls.
Hi, Councilor Ryan.
And Councilor Solomons votes aye, and the motion passes. Thank you very much. So now, Mr. Bonin, if you would care to provide us with the finance director's report.
I don't really have anything tonight. I mean, the budget's moving along. The biggest issue we're going to get to shortly, but other than that, I don't have much else.
Okay, thank you. So, and I see Chief Rich just joining. He is muted now. And I think it's okay to go ahead and make the motion if one of the counselors wants to do that.
I'll go
So
ahead
this
and
is-
make the motion.
New business item number 2.
Oh, 2.
Number 1.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 1.
Okay.
Excusing myself.
And you're passing it on, Bill. Okay. New business, item 1, I move to recommend the town council authorize the mayor to submit an application to the state of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management for the 2022 Justice Assistant Grant, JAG, in an amount up to $20,000 for the purchase of portable radios and accessories for the Ledyard Police Department for use on the Connecticut Land Mobile Radio Network.
Second, Councilor Ryan.
Thank you. So several years ago, we started to move onto the state police system with antennas and equipment. And I believe the last step in that is to actually purchase radios. We have $46,000 request approximately on the ARPA funding list. And this is for $20,000 applying to a grant in accordance with town ordinance for grant applications. So Chief, if you can speak, if there's anything to add to that, please let us know. And if you're speaking, you're still mute. Well, maybe the chief is having trouble getting on. I had only one question about this, and maybe the mayor or the finance director could help with this. We have 46,000 in the ARPA funding list. Is this 20,000 in addition? So do the radios really cost 60-something thousand dollars, or will this cut the ARPA funding need by 20K? Do you know, Mayor?
I think the total is that higher number, so I don't think this is going to reduce the ARPA funding.
Yeah, that's what I'm recalling.
Astoundingly expensive, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to just read a couple of notes from the action item because it talks about what we've done in the past for police.
Bill, I think John's trying to get back on again, so
Okay,
give him another minute.
all right.
Bill, I have
think
a
that's
quick
him.
Go ahead,
question.
Naomi.
So what if that grant doesn't come through? Then do we increase the ARPA grant to the 66,000 or do we just leave it at the 46?
That's a good question, and that's why I was asking, trying to understand what the total cost is. So while we're waiting for Chief Rich, Naomi, if the grant doesn't come through and the total cost is 66,000, then we would move the dollar amount up on the ARPA list. That's one option. And we still haven't made any decisions on the full list. One of the things that has not been decided on is the police radios. But question I would ask the chief is, would we reduce the number of radios? What would we do? So very good question.
Okay, thank you.
So Bill, along those lines, and Naomi, thank you for bringing that up. Why, I mean, is there a potential for this grant not going through? I mean, is there competition for the grant, et cetera?
I don't know. I know the
I
mayor.
really don't. Yeah, I really don't think it is a uber competitive grant. I think it's you apply and you receive.
Okay.
So I don't think. Yeah.
But where I was going with that was, should we be just putting in the full amount into the ARPA matrix for now? But it sounds like that we're pretty sure we would get this grant anyway. So planning on the 46 and the ARPA seems responsible, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
they
think
do-
when this was introduced, that's the way it was. We had some grant money and the balance
Yeah.
was 46.
Exactly. They do have some funding in place already.
Yep.
Bill, suggestion.
Yeah, Tim.
Do we want to table this and move on while Chief
Think of the
Rich?
same thing. So
Okay.
I will move to table until we can hear from the chief.
Second, Councilor Ryan.
All in favor of tabling? Please say
Aye.
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 Okay, motion is tabled. We'll go on to new business number 2.
All right, I'll take this one. I move to recommend the town council appropriate $498,714 to account number 210-70101 TAC 58250 BOE CNR Reserve account upon receipt of the final fiscal year 2022 ASTE grant payment for items in the total amount of $216,328 as outlined in the Board of Education fiscal year 2021-2022 comprehensive list for agri-science program. In addition, approve to transfer $498,714 from general fund account 101-88210 TAC 59300 transferred funds to CNR account 210-1402 TAC 49002 transfers in upon receipt of the final fiscal year 2022 ASTE grant payment.
Second, Counselor Ingalls.
Thank you. So I'll turn this over to the Board of Ed if someone is prepared to speak about this, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So this is specific to ASTE funds, which are allocated by the state government to support our agricultural science program. And for, as has happened the last several years, the budget for that's in the town of Ledyard's budget for the ASTE grant is significantly higher, significantly lower than what is actually allocated by the state. And so we work collaboratively with our team in the ASTE program to develop a capital list that can utilize those funds and bring it to the board for their approval and then the request to town council. So just to be clear, the town budget number was lower than the actual revenue that's going to be received to support the ASTE program. So we have a long list of items that was curated by our team. And they are, I know Councilor Ryan is very attuned to this. They are one-time expenses and not reoccurring. We don't use that for staffing and things like that. But and we will do a report to the state of Connecticut and how we use the additional funds or the funds that weren't or that were allocated to the town of Ledger for ASTE.
Thank you,
So
Jay. So for the record, the total ASTE grant was $997,428. The town has received 3 payments of $249,357. There's one more due in April. And as Jay said, the town has only budgeted $695,000 of the 997. So there's a balance that needs to be budgeted of approximately, well, it's $301,692. So
And I would just
yeah,
say
go
one
ahead,
of
Jay.
our ongoing frustrations is that the intent of the funds is to serve the children that are in the program this year. And we continue to delay it based on payment cycle, which is a little bit frustrating to the team. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't just share that, you know, every year we've kind of gone through this motion, and I know the council prefers to have all of it in hand. However, it's important to note that, you know, the funds are allocated and will be received, and we would like to begin putting these things out to bid and moving this needle forward so that kids receive the benefit as soon as possible.
Thank you. So I was about to say the same thing. VOAG money has to be spent on VOAG. We can't spend it on anything else. It must be spent on the program. Question I have is about the 216,000 in the request. From what pot does that money come? Is it the January 249,000? Have the first 2 payments been spent? I'd like to know more about what's been spent versus what's received.
Can I suggest just going to the list that was provided?
Well, the list is a total of 216,000.
Yeah, no, but it has the payments on it in terms of what you're referencing, Bill. So
Okay.
we're all talking the same thing.
All right.
Because I had a similar question, so.
So I must have missed that.
So that's not something the board could speak to, because those are revenues that would be received by the town
by the town.
and allocated as the town would. What we're coming to you is saying, hey, listen, we know you're getting this bucket of money specifically earmarked for ag. We're asking to use this amount of it. What we did last year, which I thought the town council was pretty wise to do, is they set up an ag-sci CNR account last year,
Yep.
where we put the extra funds that we couldn't utilize for those capital pieces right away in there. So that vehicle exists, you know, for the remaining funds. If I don't, you know, because I also want to be very clear, we're not like scrambling to try to figure out how to spend everything immediately. And so that, you know, that CNR account is very helpful for ag specific CNR.
Yeah. So thank you, Jay. So Tim, to your point, the numbers that are at the bottom of this are what I just read out.
Right,
The motion is for $498,000.
Right.
The Board of Ed request is to spend 216,000. And I want to be clear on what the motion really
Yes,
means. Are
yeah,
we
that would
approving-
help me. I'm
Yeah.
not seeing that connection.
right,
Are
thank
we-
you.
Are we approving this? I get it that we want to move $498,000, but are we, and I should add that the 498 is the last 2 payments, one of which has not been received. But the 216,000 is, and now I'm not looking at the motion, but I don't believe it's part of the motion. So how does this work?
Bill, the 216 is in there. It says the motion is to recommend the town council appropriate $498,714 to the CNR Board of Ed Reserve account upon receipt of the final ASTE grant payment for items in the total amount of $216,328 as outlined in the Board of Education Fiscal Year 2021 Comprehensive List for Ag Science
Oh,
Program.
yeah.
And then-
Yep. Okay.
On to, approve the transfer of the $498. So up on the screen, I do have, the list.
So
The
again,
400, sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead, Tim. Go ahead.
No, the 498 is the 2 payments we've received, right?
Right. No,
So,
no,
that-
well, is it? I don't know.
well, I mean, it's twice as, no, it's
Yeah.
not actually. Yeah, no, it is,
Two-
498, yeah.
Yeah, so I was assuming it's for the next two payments. Maybe it's the two that we've received, and that's great. If-
Well,
if that's what it's
We got the
for.
finance people on the phone, right?
Can anybody help with that?
So I guess I'm not sure what the question is.
So the question is, we're appropriate, we're moving to approve the transfer of 498,000 from the general fund to the Board of Ed CNR account for ASTE grants.
Okay,
But the town has received that exact dollar amount. Is that the money we're moving? Or are we moving to transfer the two payments? There are two more payments, one of which is received, the other is not. Are we moving those funds? So the four payments, which two are we moving? That's one question. And
Really,
then,
it's, yeah,
and
sorry.
then how much have we spent of the 997,000? How much is already accounted for or encumbered? Because 216 is obviously not, is it the first 216,000 of this $1 million, or is it, somewhere along the middle?
well, the appropriation is to move the 498 over into the capital fund, correct?
Correct.
then-
Yep.
Then you're approving to spend the 216 out of the capital fund.
Yep.
Correct?
Yes. But the questions we're asking are, if we've got $1 million coming from for VOAG, have we already spent some of it, and is the 216 supplemental, or is it the first dollars out of this million that we're spending? That's what I'm trying to understand.
I would think it's the first dollars out of that you're spending.
So this is Mr. Harling. Perhaps I can make some sense of this.
Okay.
So the towns counted on revenue from ASTE to supplement educational programming. So we have always taken it that the budgeted amount, the original allocation, the 600 something, right, is
Yep.
part of town revenue. You've allocated that to the Board of Ed. We use that to fund the various pieces. That money is being used, right?
Yep.
The additional funds, which you never counted on in your budget, are hanging in limbo right now, in a sense. While you have not received them per se, they're hanging in limbo because they're not allocated in your budget. It's
Yep.
revenue that you didn't plan for in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
And I feel like you're asking the six something that was allocated in your budget went to the Board of Education to spend on ag side, paying for the teacher salaries and all of those things that are going on actively in the program.
So
So
I just,
So then the answer to my question is, if I understand, Jay, is that the 690,000 that's been budgeted is being or has been spent. The
Correct.
request is to spend another 216,000 and
Correct.
move the remaining two payments.
Move the remaining amount.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
so just to clarify here, the plan to spend the 216, so I understand the whole picture now, the global picture, which I appreciate everybody's patience. But, of the roughly $1 million that we're expecting from ASTE, the original budget was 695. Superintendent Hartling, this is a plan to spend an additional 216 on top of that 695, which would leave a balance of around $84,000, give or take, right?
Correct.
Okay, so is there a plan for that 84? I'm just curious if there's a plan for that remaining funding, or are you going to be looking to carry that over if the funds, I don't know if the funds are one-year funds, if they have a
No,
life
they don't.
cycle?
No, I appreciate that question. So what the town council did last year is we set up an ASTE CNR account that could be
That's it.
dedicated to those things, so that, because we really don't want to be in this move where we're forcing it. And the team is really working on some of these things, take some lead time.
So government funds in general sometimes have a life cycle to them, and I'm not familiar with this grant. So I didn't know, are these funds needed to be spent at any particular time by, are required by the state to be
We
spent?
have to, yeah, so the answer to that question is we're required to show the state how we spent any additional funds within that fiscal year. So the state is tracking the additional grant funds that they provided, and so that's the only locked in amount that we're required to check, not the full.
But you do not need to spend it within the fiscal year.
Part of it we do,
Oh, okay,
and this covers that.
okay. The 216 you're saying.
Yeah,
covers.
exactly. Yes.
Gotcha.
So we'll
Okay.
take the expenditures from the 216. And we have to track that with the state. So like the heating and air conditioning, like that will get state tags on it. And when we dispose of it, when it's ended its life
Yeah.
cycle, we'll dispose of it that way. Yeah. Like the
Okay.
boat that Mayor Fred sold a while back, that was a state asset because it was bought with ASTE funds. So we had to go and offer it up to the rest of the state. It's a beautiful process.
The boat that nobody knew we had, if I recall. Although it fetched quite a bit of money, I thought. So anyway, all right,
Okay,
Bill, I
so-
think,
So the exact math, as you were saying, Tim, I just did the math. We budgeted $695,736. We are being asked to spend another $216,398. That's a total of $912,134, leaving remaining funds yet to be spent or allocated of $85,294. Now, the only concern is we haven't received the April payment yet, so we could be a little bit in the red if we don't. Does anyone have a sense of, we usually get the ASTE payments, but we don't always. Sometimes they get shorted.
We haven't been shorted on ASTE at least for the last 5 years that I've been your superintendent.
Okay,
And there's no indication that the state is gonna do any kind of rescission on any allocations of ed funding this fiscal year.
okay.
And I would just lastly point out, if that were the case, you have Ag-Sci CNR account left over from last year, that if we got into that position, we could.
Okay. good
right,
point.
and Bill, the motion language, I think, takes care of your concern because we're approved, if we
Yep.
were to approve this, it would only be upon receipt of the final payment.
Correct. Yep. Okay. All right. So sorry to beat this to death. I have one more question. It's just the way the motion is written. We're appropriating from I'm just trying to read this again. My confusion is because, I got it. All right, never mind. I withdraw the question. Haven't even asked it. All right, I have no more questions. Andra, Tim?
You asked all my questions.
All right,
I'm just along for the ride. Thank you.
ready to vote?
I have a question.
Roxanne, yeah.
Okay, so, Mr. Hartling said that, before we had it in the Board of Ed ASTE CNR account. So, do you want Matt and I to look up that number tomorrow and make sure we have that account number in here instead of just the Board of Ed CNR Reserve account? Would that be better for them?
Probably yes.
Well,
Have that
where,
account if you would like it.
Oh, you
You're
have
talking
the
about the
account?
revenue account for the ASTE grant?
Right, yeah. Do you have that number, Ian?
Yeah. Yeah, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Org is 1017002
Okay,
and the object is 42018.
that's in the spreadsheet. Okay, yeah.
Ian, is that the CNR account or is that the revenue account?
That's the general fund revenue account that the revenue is booked to.
Right, but
Is that what
I'm sorry, I think what Roxanne was asking for was the ASTE CNR account. No.
Oh, the
Yes.
specific VOAG one?
Yeah, sorry.
right,
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Right. all right.
So while Ian's looking that up, would we, the budget for these funds, and I wasn't part of the budgeting last year, but the budget for these funds is that CNR account, that general account. It gets transferred from there to the schools VOAG account. Is that how these funds get spent, or do they get spent directly? So Superintendent Arling, you have to make a request like this, and then the funds get spent out of this account. It doesn't transfer over to the board, right?
Correct. Only for this extra funding that we're talking about, this
Right.
unaccounted, the Board of Education voted, makes the request to town council, and then the town council allocates it over, and then we can cut POs to that.
Okay. All right.
So where in this motion do we put that account number? Because I can't figure it out.
Well, I think we're going to appropriate, it's in the first line, motion to appropriate $498,714 to account. And what the account we have right now is just the Board of Ed Reserve CNR account, whereas I think Mr. Hartling wants it to go into the
Okay.
ag science account. Is that
Yeah.
correct, Mr. Hartling? Is that what you're asking for?
Correct. The CNR, the Ag Science CNR account that town council set up last year, that should already have a balance in it.
Okay, so we need a friendly amendment, Andra, to
Right. So
change.
Ian's
first
looking up
account.
that number.
Got it. Looks
Okay,
like we
what is it
created this
now?
count in fiscal year 20. Mr. Hartling, does that sound correct?
I think so, sir.
So Roxanne, whenever you're ready, I will give you the account. It is the listed as the capital ag science account.
Okay, I'm ready.
It is 2107-0101. And the object is 58261.
Okay,
Do we have
What's
to
the
change?
current balance in that account?
The current balance is no encumbrances, and your available is $135,600.
So I just wanted to make that clear to the town councilors that should the last payment be a problem, you have that funds in the Ag Sci CNR ready.
So is that the account right now where the first two payments got transferred to?
All the payments that we receive are booked directly to the general fund, and then whatever is in excess is made through a motion by you guys to transfer it to this specific account, like what we're doing right now. So all the original payments get posted to the general fund.
So just to be clear, we're in the motion, we're changing the first account number to the account number that Ian just gave us. And we're replacing BOE CNR Reserve with the ASTE Ag Sci.
And the account numbers don't need to change in the second paragraph? Obviously not general fund, but for the CNR account?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay.
well, I don't know. Ian, do you have the motion in front of you? I think that it might need to be the same.
I believe I do have the motion in front of me. I do believe what I am reading, the only thing that needs to change is the appropriation motion.
Is the first?
The first paragraph.
Okay, the second one is okay? The
Yes.
210,
Yeah.
One
So
four.
both the second paragraph is just a transfer from fund to fund, which Matt can tell you, we get snagged on not using transfer in and transfer outs by the auditors.
Okay.
So we have to use the transfer out account in the general fund and transfer in account in the capital fund. And then the
Okay.
budget appropriation will be to the correct ag science account to create that
Okay,
available
thank
budget.
I just had a question on the amount. If the general fund budget was the 695, 736, and the total was the 997, wouldn't the amount to transfer just be the overage of the 301? And not the final two payments?
I was wondering the same thing.
Well, if I recall I'm sorry, I don't want to speak for Superintendent Hartling, but I think that's where the funds exist to carry over to the following year, the funds that he's not required to spend. Is that still true?
Yeah, I apologize because I didn't create the motion, but I'm trying to support where you guys are going with this. So I think Matt is absolutely spot on that the difference is 301 and that's the number you should be using. The payment, like the first payment, last payment, that's kind of I don't think that's an issue that really needs to factor in. So it's the 301, which is the difference amount.
Okay, so
We want to spend 216 of the 301. And then that remainder would go to the Ag CNR.
Okay, so
So-
what's the, now, Matt? It's 301 what?
It's 301, 692. It's the amount on the spreadsheet that you're sharing at the bottom.
Oh, I see it now. Okay. Thank you.
So if that's what we're gonna do, I'm arriving at the conclusion that when we say appropriate, we kind of mean budget. Because we've already budgeted the 695. Right? Are the two words interchangeable, appropriate and budget?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, we should be changing this motion to use the 301,000. Not the 498. Okay.
well, hey, Bill.
Yeah.
So your original budget was 695.
Yeah.
Well, so we're changing that budget to not 301.
We're adding, we're
No,
adding,
I get it. So the
Oh,
way
I
the
see what you're
motion
saying.
is written
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now
yeah.
is do we want this to say 997? Which is the addition of the 301 to the current budget.
Yeah.
I
don't
think in
think
years
so.
past,
No.
we used the word supplemental. I think we said motion to appropriate a supplemental
I think
300,
that's fine.
whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had the word supplemental in there before.
Okay.
Roxanne, have you been trying to write any of this down?
I'm writing it all down, Bill.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you,
Got
Roxanne.
We're gonna have to read it again.
Okay, well, you let me know when you're ready for the friendly amendment.
Yeah, I'm gonna suggest that we withdraw this motion and just start over.
I agree.
So would the mover like to withdraw the motion?
I will withdraw the motion on the table
Thank
for
you.
agenda item number 2.
Okay. So Roxanne, ready to read?
Okay, it's motion to recommend the town council appropriate a supplemental amount of $301,692 to account 210-70101-58261 BOE ASTE account upon receipt of the final fiscal year 2022 ASTE grant payment for items in the total amount of $216,328 as outlined in the Board of Education Fiscal Year 2021 Comprehensive List for Ag Science Program. In addition, approved to transfer $301,692 from General Fund Account 101-88210-59300 transferred funds to CNR Account 210-1402-49002 transfers in upon receipt of the final fiscal year 2022 ASTE grant payment.
Thank you. And Tim, would you make that motion? Just
So moved.
so moved. There you go. Okay.
Counselor Ingalls seconds.
All right. All in
Thank
favor,
you, Roxanne.
please say aye.
Counselor Ingalls votes aye.
Councilor Ryan votes aye.
Counselor Collins votes aye and the motion passes. Thank you all very much.
Do we want to go back to number 1?
Yes. Jake, are you with us?
I don't know if he is. I sent him an email, but I didn't get a response back. So maybe he signed on and then had to leave.
Okay,
I don't know.
Do have the email that I sent on to you, Bill, on February 3rd. That was the summary of the radio purchase. And it reads as follows. It says the total estimated cost of the radios is $98,125. Total from other sources is $52,000, which includes the JAG grant of $20,000. That's the one we're speaking about right now.
Yep.
Existing in capital for in-car video of $20,000. A check from Ledgelight for drug-free communities for $12,000, leaving a total ARPA request of $46,125.
thank you, Mayor.
Well,
And so this motion is just to authorize the mayor to submit the application for the grant. We're not buying the radios yet.
Right.
correct.
So. Okay,
Okay.
so that
You-
motion was tabled. Would someone like to remove it?
Does it need to be removed by the person who tabled it?
No.
No.
Well, I move to pull it off the table, the right word.
So, second, Counselor Ryan.
All in favor of removing from the table?
Aye, Counselor.
Aye. Counselor Sullins votes aye. So now we have more information. Do we have any other questions or discussion? Or are you ready to vote?
Ready to vote.
Ready to vote.
All in favor, please say aye.
Counselor Ingalls votes aye.
Counselor Ryan votes aye.
Counselor Sullins votes aye. The motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, on to item number 3. So this is a discussion, I think. We have discovered that the current fiscal year that we're in, as well as the year that we're budgeting, fiscal year ending 2023, we are short a significant amount of healthcare funds for the Board of Ed. This occurred due to a change in practices over the years, a change in personnel, and also a change in the healthcare plan that we're subscribed to. So my hope is, and I'll ask that more information be shared about what happened, but my hope, it's significant dollars. And my hope is that we will put a written procedure in place, because if we had a written procedure, who does what in coming up with the budget for healthcare or anything else, this would be less likely to have happened, and certainly less likely to happen in the future. We're operating between 2 departments, and as I mentioned, we've had changes in employees, we've had changes in health plans, and changes in practices. So some assumptions were made, and it turns out that we're short in the current fiscal year, and then we went and looked at the planned budget that we're working on now, and that is also short. So I'll stop there and see if someone wants to explain more about the actual numbers and what's going on.
Yeah, so I'll
Bill, Chief Rich just signed on again.
Oh,
I texted him, said it was done too. So on Monday, it became apparent that the healthcare account was certainly tracking to be overexpended. So we started doing some digging and found that it appears that the Board of Ed's budget for this current year did not include the cost for retiree health care, which is about $500,000. So the retiree health care is subsidized, but the subsidies are recorded as revenues not netted against the expense. So they actually need to be budgeted. And additional to that, the biweekly board healthcare expenses were averaging about $233,000 per pay period, of which they have 20 a year. But more recently, it's trending at $240,000 every pay period, with 7 pay periods remaining this fiscal year. So combining the two, the omission of the retirees and the overage for the existing employees, we're looking at a deficit of about $970,000 for this fiscal year. And additionally, FY23 also does not include or omits the retirees. So it's another gap that needs to be corrected. So we have one that we're in an existing fiscal year that we need to fix, and we also need to fix the upcoming fiscal year before it gets to us. So that's the source of the issue right now. Matt will chime in with some additional information, and Ian is here as well to support the same.
So I see Chief Rich. I'm trying to text him and chat with him and tell him we approved the radios, the application for the radios, Chief. So if there's anything you want to add, why don't you jump in?
I just want to thank you. We were tied up with an emergency call. I'm happy it ended with no problem and a successful outcome so far. And I knew the mayor had it in hand as far as the purpose for the grant. So I really appreciate the support. And then the only other thing, I know the mayor was holding off until the town council to actually sign the application until the town council hears it next week. So I'll just be waiting and standing by for that decision.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll let you get on with your evening, Chief. We're all done. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, sorry, Fred.
No, that's all right. Matt was going to jump in at that point, and like I said, Ian's also here to support.
Yeah, I just want to provide a little more of the background. So the Board of Ed healthcare account, what's expended out of there is medical, dental, vision for active employees, and then the medical for the retirees. And like the mayor said, the subsidies that come in for the retirees are booked in a revenue account. The expenditure is recognized in this account. So the budget for 21-22, when that was being developed, it was arrived at by taking an amount that came over to Don of roughly $4.1 million. And that was based off of what the premiums were in 2021. But we knew, or Don knew, that there was going to be a 4.5% increase. So he took that number that he received from the Board of Ed, the 4 million and change, bumped it up by the known increase of 4.5%. That calculation gives you the budget that you see now, the 4,254,000. What's not factored in there is the roughly $500,000 that should have been budgeted for retirees. That is not reflected in the current budget. So in terms of current year expenses, like the mayor was saying, the biweekly board expense for healthcare had been averaging around 233,000. The last 3 or 4 trending higher, almost 240,000. So when you project that out, total healthcare costs for active members is projected to be roughly 4.7 million. So when you take that 4.7 million and you look at that versus what was budgeted of the 4,254,000, that's the first piece of your shortfall. There's a shortfall in active premiums of 470,000. Then on top of that is the $500,000 for retirees that never got budgeted to that line. So that's where we're arriving at the 970,000 shortfall that we're projecting this year. So factoring that in to the 22-23 budget, if you take the projected premiums for the actives of the 4.7 million, we need to bump that up by 8%, which is what we were given for roughly what they're thinking the premiums are going to go up by. That gets you to $5.1 million. And then on top of that, you have to add in the retiree premiums, which we're thinking around 500,000 for 21-22, 8% on top of that gets you to 540. So the two of those together the board healthcare line really should be at 5.64 million for 22-23.
So we're going to be scrambling, looking for funds to make up for this.
I would say so.
This is Mr. Hartling. So it needs to be very clear that the Board of Education has no visibility over what those expenses are. So all we can provide is active employees at the current moment in time. And that's the information we provided since I've been here for the last 5 years. And I shared that with you, Councilor Soms. We have not had that visibility, nor do we have that visibility. So you can go into the BOE medical account, there's Blue Script. We have no idea what those expenses are, nor have we ever provided an estimated number for that budget amount. And I just, calling to check, if we look since 2016 fiscal year, there's been about $1.7 million in over budgeted funds in that account. But last year, we provided the same information as this current fiscal year, and we were within the town budgeted within 22,000. And I'd just like to note that when you have a 14% decrease in a budget line item, that should throw a red flag. I don't participate in the town side of the budget. That the healthcare is not in the Board of Ed's purview. But I just know that it was called out in the letter about the town reducing its healthcare cost, and that it allowed for the town to have a 0.75 decrease in its expenditures. So it's the healthcare issue, and I believe Councilor Soms, you've been on council long and understand the history of the healthcare costs and how that's all been managed. This has been completely out of the Board of Ed's purview, and we just don't have visibility over the cost center beyond the deductions that our employees take. And so Rachel can speak more to what she has information on, but we're not able to give you a number because I couldn't tell you who the retirees are or what their expenses are related to that. And we never have given you that number. So Rachel can speak to what we have visibility to. And I can also just share that I've raised this red flag when the budget was proposed, because we saw BOE healthcare budget drop by that 14%. And as I shared with Mayor Fred, my only assumption was that you were using the $960,000 over budget in fiscal year 20 as potentially making that up, or some other move on the town side that I wasn't privy to. But it was a glaring change in the budgeting, and we're just not part of that overall conversation. So Rachel, can you just speak to what we have visibility on?
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. All right, I think there's no echo now. So the superintendent is correct. We have typically provided to the town a snapshot of our active employees. As you know, healthcare, elections, and life events can be highly volatile. So even in the time that we initially had pulled the numbers to send them over to the town to when I re-pulled them yesterday, we'd already had 4 changes. So we've typically given a snapshot in time. It's not been a typically collaborative process in which we work with town staff on an estimate of how the premium might increase or what we'll expect to see in open enrollment. It's literally just a snapshot of our active employees on a given day. And we don't take a guess at the rest of those things because it's not really in our purview to make those assumptions on the behalf of the town, because it's not a budgetary item that we oversee. Actually, yesterday was the first time that I'd actually looked at the ledger in that account to see what kinds of charges are going into it. So we just don't have the kind of visibility to forecast that information for the retirees or the other costs. So again, just active employees, we send that over as requested. Thank you.
So I would like to ask that the town and the Board of Ed employees put their heads together, both on the finance and the HR side, along with the mayor and the superintendent, and come up with a written procedure. Because if the town knows that all the Board of Ed is going to provide or can provide is the number of active employees, then the town will know that they then have to calculate for the retired and take the necessary steps to estimate what the budget's going to be for both sides. To me, this screams for a written procedure. Written procedures keep you out of these kind of problems. And when you write a procedure, that's when you find out what you don't know and what you need to know, and who has to do what to make sure that we get the process right. So that would be my request, separate from what we're going to have to do to come up with the funds or come up with a different budget than we thought we were going to come up with.
One thing I just added is that the monthly statements for the retirees are provided to the Board of Ed on a monthly basis, and the board approves this. So somebody's got to be seeing them over there and seeing who the retirees are and what the numbers are and how those numbers fluctuate from time to time. And if there are questions, they should be coming up based on those monthly statements.
But I couldn't tell you what the town process is for budgeting BOE healthcare. And I couldn't have told you that 2 years ago. And we got a simple request, which is all documented via email, of what the question is that we can provide, and that's active employees. The fact that an invoice is passed over to us also means that somebody else has visibility on that invoice. We again have no visibility over it. And if we look at last fiscal year, we were with whoever created the number was within 22,000. Right? It's not like we're self-insured anymore. I mean, we understand our premiums. This is, I'm happy. I think Bill is Councilor Song is absolutely right around a written procedure. This has been an internal process to the town of which the Board of Education staff haven't really been part of, other than to provide active employees with a snapshot in time. Even finding out what the increase is from open enrollment comes from the town side pushed over to us. And that's kind of how it's functioned. So I appreciate Councilor Som suggesting a process that would be a little bit more eye-opening for us as well.
All right, so we will be gathering all the data that we can on this. My understanding, and maybe I was wrong, but my understanding was Shannon was somehow involved with the process in the past, and whoever is in Shannon's seat now maybe didn't pick up on that aspect of the job. But we're going to gather that information and make sure that it's available so that situations like this don't happen again.
Thank you, Mayor. I did talk to Marcia this afternoon, and I said to her that we are screaming for a procedure here, a written procedure, because when people leave, that's when things fall through the cracks. And a new person comes on, somebody doesn't tell them, things don't get done the way they were. So Ian, I'm sorry, you were trying to speak.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I'm sorry, it was actually Therese that provided us that information originally when I first started here. I think Shannon built the insurance tables, but never provided us any information. It was the benefits coordinator position that always provided us the information.
That's correct, Ian.
Therese has been gone 3 years.
Yeah, I think so. Last year, the information was provided us by Christine.
Yeah, the last 2 budget cycles, Chris provided it, and that number was then built up by whoever does. I don't know who does the healthcare expenditure budget on the town side, but whoever did that must have built it up somehow outside of what Chris provided, because we have that documentation.
Yeah, I have the Excel spreadsheet in front of me, and what she provided us was what you said, a snapshot. And then there was a 4.5% increase based on the prediction of the 4.5% increase that we were supposed to get. But so we received this spreadsheet from Chris last year, February. And so I took a snapshot of a payroll last year during that time, and I compared the numbers to what Chris provided us, and it does appear to be low compared to what the numbers were during a February payroll.
All right, so Therese was somehow involved and Shannon was somehow involved before. And the point I guess that I'm trying to make is the people that now fill those roles of Therese and Shannon hopefully would be picking up on whatever knowledge base was left behind for them to do that job. And I guess that's
We
what,
don't provide the town what number they use because we don't have all the data. And we never have. And what I would just point out is last year, the data Chris provided is the same as the data, or last fiscal year is the same as the data she provided this fiscal year with regards to the amount. This fiscal year, some way, there was a decision to cut 14% from healthcare and roll with a number that was dramatically lower with no question, no ask, no wondering. And that's really ultimately, I think, another big learning lesson. If you have a 14% reduction in a line item, you'd think there'd be some justification on why that exists, because all it would take is one question. Like, why did healthcare and BOE go down 14%? I mean, when we have a 4% escalation.
Jay, I totally hear what you're saying. The spreadsheet I have from Chris has the exact budget number she gave us. The 4.254 is in the spreadsheet that Chris provided us. It's the snapshot of what was currently happening, and then with a 4.5% increase. So that 4.2 million was provided to us by Chris.
so that's a number that is coming from your side, Jay. That's what I'm not understanding.
So look back at 2021, right, where we provided the same snapshot and additional dollars were added to it to account for all the things that we don't have visibility over. Blue script, for example, we can't even tell you what that is. Sorry, Councilor Ryan.
So if I could suggest something here, we're not going to engineer a solution tonight. I think the point that Councilor Soms is trying to make is that we need to make sure this doesn't happen again. And whether that's through a procedure, which I agree with Bill, is something that this seems ripe for. But I don't want to be here next year and hear the fact that nobody's taking ownership over this. There needs to be ownership on both sides, both the town and the BOE. And you guys need to work together so that next year we're not in the same situation. But we're not going to engineer the solution in this meeting. This is a discussion. Bill, I'm sorry if I'm.
No, you're right.
This is your meeting. I'm sorry, but
No, that's right.
There needs to be a working session, as Bill, Councilor Soms stated, with all the right heads in the room to come to the solution for how this doesn't happen again. And it's not in this meeting.
So the mayor has said that he would work, and he and his staff would work with the Board of Ed, with superintendent and their staff. So let's get a written procedure. Let's get it in place. And then the finance committee and the mayor and the finance department can focus on what we're going to do with the budget, because we've got to move on to that. And that's what we have to solve right now. So thank you all. We'll look for a written procedure shortly. I think that will be helpful. Okay, I'm going to move on. We have left on our agenda one more item under new business. And we have a couple of old business items on the ARPA project. So if all of the Board of Ed folks wish to leave, you're welcome to do so. You don't have to suffer through more of this. So thank you for coming. I think we will get through this. So appreciate your time. And that said, I will move on.
Thank you, Mr. Soms.
Thank you, Mike. Let's move on to a motion for item number 4 under new business.
You want this, Andra?
Sure. I don't know whose turn it is, but I'll take this one. I move to recommend I move to recommend the town council approve 4 tax refunds in the combined total amount of $13,515.94, with each exceeding $2,400 in accordance with tax collector departmental procedures.
Is there a second?
Second, Councilor Ryan.
Thank you. So I don't know if you've looked at the action file, but all 4 were residents. They all paid twice. It looks like all the names, the addresses are correct. I really appreciate the summary now that we're getting with this, which shows each one of the dollar amount. So I have no questions, and if I'll leave it up to the other 2 counselors if you have questions or comments.
No, it's
No
pretty clear.
questions.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. This is one procedure I think we've got down pat. So all in favor, please say aye.
Counselor Ingalls votes aye.
Council Ryan votes aye.
As does Counselor Psalms, the motion passes. On ARPA, Counselor Ryan, you had
Yeah.
suggested that we might want to look at adding another item for the criteria, and I have taken the liberty of doing that.
Oh,
And
okay.
Unless, do you have something, Tim?
Well, not, no, go on. I mean,
Okay.
I have some discussion items, but I'm interested to hear what you have.
All right, and this, again, this is just what I came up with this afternoon. I'm going to share it, see what you guys think. I hate when that happens. Do you see a spreadsheet?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so what I did was add this column here, does not include recurring expense. And since anything that saves the town money is weighted as a 5, I figured I'd better
Wait, I don't
this
like,
as a 5.
I don't like that asterisk.
Well, that's so except normal maintenance. Look at the bottom. I couldn't see my way out of that because basically we're going to say no to all these things. So hear me out. So again, if the item does not include a recurring expense, I put a number 1 in the column, and then the formula gives it a score. So I said that the sewer line extension does not include a recurring expense because it's paid for by the ratepayers. So it's not a recurring expense to the taxpayers. So the whole sewer project is not a recurring, does not have a recurring expense. I went down to the Gales Ferry corridor study, and man, we could argue about every one of these. You know, if you have a corridor study, there's going to be an expense. It's going to be a let's do something. But the study itself, I don't think, in my opinion, has a recurring expense. So I gave it a 1. Whoops. No wonder those scores are so high.
Yeah, that would be
Wait
the
a second.
opposite.
I just noticed. All right, the rest are 1s. Regional water interconnection, again, paid for by the ratepayers. Water main upgrades, paid for by the ratepayers. ClearGov modules, you got to pay for ClearGov every year, if I'm not mistaken, so it doesn't get a 1. And Mayor or anybody else, just interrupt me if I'm going along too fast. The Owl Pro.
Yeah.
I think we have to pay something for that every year. I don't know about the recovery planner. You could argue that one forever. Yes, it's.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Owl Pro, that's the funds to purchase the Owl Pro, not to pay for the
Oh, you're right.
recurring expense.
You're right.
The cost for that on an annual basis has been factored into the MIS budget.
Right.
Okay, but if we didn't purchase the additional Owl Pro, we wouldn't have that recurring expense, right?
Absolutely.
So I'll leave that blank.
Wait a minute, we would have, but wait, so we wouldn't have a recurring expense if we didn't have an additional Owl Pro?
I
No, if
assume you-
we didn't have the owl at all, we wouldn't have a recurring expense. We have 2 owls so that
Right.
we can have the hybrid meeting. So yes, we do have a recurring expense.
Oh, I thought you were saying that if you only had 1 Owl Pro,
No,
that
no.
it wouldn't be recurring. It didn't make sense to me, so.
No,
Yeah, I think
Okay.
the way software works today, you buy something, you buy
Right.
a license every year.
It's a service.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
get 2 things, you got 2 licenses that you buy every year. Okay, so the recovery planner, yeah, that's a recurring
That's
expense.
a recurring expense.
But does it replace somebody? Probably not. So I left it blank. Cultural coalition, I don't know. I don't remember. Legislate Health, we know there's a recurring expense there. TVCCA, I'm not sure. Solar charging station, it's free. Once you put it in there, other than maintenance, it's free.
So Bill, that's a good point, right? I mean, so we talk about things like the infrastructure changes for that, and it's items that are going to get paid by new revenue, right? The maintenance for those items are going to get paid by new revenue that's coming in.
Right.
So we're using the ARPA funds to create the infrastructure, which is going to help us make the new revenue to pay for the maintenance.
Correct.
In something like this, however, is there revenue associated with a solar charging station? I don't think so, right?
No.
Yeah, right. So this to me, I don't know. I have no clue what the maintenance is involved with that. I mean,
But again, I'm saying everything has to be maintained. So
right.
that's why I have,
But sorry, go ahead.
so that's why I have an asterisk on it.
Yeah.
Because we'll just, I mean, none of these are going to get a 1 unless, except for the, when there's revenue from a separate revenue stream.
Or it's replacing something that we currently already have, for example, like the playscape replacement, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyway.
So I don't think there's, other than maintenance, I don't think there's an expense. Same thing with.
Hey, Bill, there's one
Yeah.
more thing. So, I mean, one thing I'd like to understand, and I don't know the scope of it, so maybe it's not something we need to worry about, but in general, if the maintenance, if we are buying something that is a one-time expense with the ARPA funds, but it introduces a new element that we might have to maintain and there's no new revenue to offset that maintenance.
Exactly.
It might behoove us, and again, I'm not sure the solar charging station is the scope of something we need to be worried about necessarily, but as a principle, it would probably behoove us to understand what that additional maintenance cost is going to be, just so we're not surprised by it.
Yeah,
And
I agree. I'm trying to draw a line in the sand because there's a big difference between regular maintenance on a thing and a recurring salary that comes along with the thing.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's the metric I used. Erickson Park, yep, you've got to maintain it, but are there any other costs? It's something we already have. Except that it's an enhancement. I'll move on. Playscape, we already have it. Wi-Fi, you put Wi-Fi in, you got to pay for Wi-Fi. So that does not get a 1.
That's not included in like I mean, when you say install Wi-Fi, I'm assuming that means routers. I forgot, there was an explanation for what it was, but that also includes additional service, or
I
is that
assume so. I don't actually know how we're going to connect to that thing.
Yeah, so right now there's no service over at the lower town green, or I guess the upper town green for that matter. So the idea is we install Wi-Fi into the food pantry, which they currently have no Wi-Fi, no email capability, no nothing over there. So we put it there. It serves the purpose in both the pantry, and then we have a range extender up in probably the Holdridge Pavilion. So we would get coverage on the lower town green and the upper town green.
So this would be a case where you're actually installing a new service location for internet service.
Yes.
Yes. So that's it's not installing Wi-Fi, it's establishing internet service at the pantry.
Right.
Right.
So the choices are going to be a telephone line with a DSL connection or a cable. And hopefully the cable runs off of our CEN network, but putting that cable over there is going to have a cost associated.
Right.
So, or maybe it's Comcast. I don't know, but there is a cost.
Yeah, but now that I understand that this is establishing a service, then yeah, I would agree with your assessment here.
Yeah. Okay. Lead abatement, it's a one-time done, paid for and finished. If there's more lead, it won't be from this, it'll be something else. So that got a 1. LED sign panel. I don't think there's any recurring service for that. I assume it runs off of Wi-Fi already existing in the station. And maybe some electricity, but again, not a big deal. Solar powered crosswalk signs are self-powered, but again, they will have maintenance. The 2 dispatch stations, that's something we already have, no additional cost, just a replacement.
I don't know about this police radio replacement.
I just lost my place. Yeah, so police radios.
That was
You
a
know-
joke since we were just talking about it.
Oh, all right,
hopefully.
all right.
Hopefully
But,
nobody
you know,
gets
they
it.
wear out, they get lost, as opposed to something you buy and it lasts forever. So, you know,
Yeah.
again, we could beat these all night. I'll move on. Sanya Hollow guardrails, nothing but
Concrete floor.
maintenance. Yep.
Wow, $0 for a promotional video.
$0 because I didn't give it a 1 for priority yet. We
Ah,
could. So,
gotcha.
so what we do is we look at these scores on the right and we say if it's above a certain level,
Right.
we're gonna go over in column H and give it a 1, say, yeah, we're gonna buy it. As
Right.
soon as we say, yeah, we're gonna pay for that, then we get a cost,
Gotcha.
6,000.
Okay. All right.
And we probably could squeeze that in, but again, I'm trying to do the priority thing first.
Just so you know, on that one, the EDC is working with a company that may produce that video completely for free.
Awesome.
They're going to get advertising out of it. And so I know it's a small item in this big picture, but
Yep.
there is an option there.
Yep, good. Good news. Okay, sidewalk infill. You could argue that if you got sidewalks, you got to plow them, or somebody does. And of course, you have to maintain them. Town green improvements, again, no additional salaries associated with these is the way I'm looking at them, so I gave it a 1. The brackets on the lamp poles, we already have them. AC, we already have it. The vinyl siding on the food pantry is normal maintenance. The roof, normal maintenance. 6 doors, normal maintenance. Housing rehab. I don't know what to do with this, but I gave it a 1 because it kind of replenishes itself when liens get paid off. And yet we're adding to the fund because they haven't been paid off yet. Parks and Rec summer scholarships, it's a one-time thing. Sidewalks, same as before, 5G. I did not mean to give that a 1. The swimming pool would definitely have costs, so I didn't give that a 1. Lighting for tennis courts, you got to pay for more electricity. The fence, that's a replacement of an existing, and the missing street light is probably going to get paid for out of the Public Works Director's budget because he's been working on it all along, planning to replace that. So that's what I've got.
So, Bill, I appreciate you putting this column in here. I may have mentioned that once or twice before.
I
But
think it's good to have it. It's a very good point. It's the right way to look at things.
I am admittedly delinquent on sending you and Andra some articles that I found that talk to how other communities are prioritizing ARPA funds, and also how some consulting agencies have suggested municipalities in general think about how to prioritize their funds. I do not know if those consultancies were funded by anybody, but either way, they seem to be somewhat objectively written. But one of the key points I took away from many of those articles is, in general, any ARPA funds that municipalities spend should be focused on making the municipality or enabling the municipality to sustain itself in the long run. So they should all have strategic implications in allowing the municipality, in this case us, to be successful going forward and be able to weather future storms, future financial storms, potentially better than we would have been without these funds. So using those funds responsibly to blunt any potential expenses that we might have had to have fielded later on. And I think that's a lens that we should be looking at all these through. And we have a number of categories up here, so I'm not looking to add another one that says that, because I think a lot of these categories kind of speak to that in some sense, like supporting economic development, for example, and saving the town money. But it is like the overall lens, in my opinion, that we should be looking at these funds through.
That makes a lot of sense.
Tim, I would really like to see some of those articles.
Yeah, I'm looking at my work computer over here because I had the articles on there, and unfortunately I don't have my ID to be able to log on to the computer because it's in the car. So I've got to, I'll get that later and I'll send it on to you guys. But yeah, so I did have a particular question, and Bill, you probably would be able to weigh in on this a lot better than I would, since you've been involved with the commission. But I went to the HDC, I called in to the HDC meeting on Monday, and they discussed a number of initiatives they have going on that are improving, like the Nathan Lester House, for example, security, right? And I didn't bring it up at the meeting because I didn't want to interrupt anything they had going on in process, but I figured we'd talk about it here. I just didn't know if any of that might be good fodder for ARPA, because I'm not sure if it would even be applicable, but the criteria for using ARPA funds is widened up so much that maybe it doesn't even matter. But that in a commission that is as low budgeted as they are for what they have cognizance of, it might be an area to look, because saving them $10,000 is going to make a big difference to them. So
I think it would be worth asking them, Tim, because on another point, there's a lot of interest in what can we do for Gales Ferry? What's on this list that is for Gales Ferry? And,
right.
The Nathan Lester House is not exactly in Gales Ferry, but it's pretty close.
That was just one example. They seem to have a number of initiatives that they were funding. So in both preservation and which, I mean, you could argue preserving historical landmarks, is in some way supporting economic development, because tourism
builds community, builds quality of life.
But that too. So anyway, just a thought.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Naomi has her hand up, Bill.
Oh, I'm sorry, Naomi. I'm never looking. I apologize. What's up?
Just pop it up.
Thank you, Andrea. Councilor Ingalls. Councilor Psalms, my question is, what's the timeline for when we're going to vote on this? And what's the procedure? Does the Finance Committee decide what to send forward to the town council? Or do you want town councilors to look at this and then give their input? I'm just curious.
Yeah,
about
good question. So what we've been doing is bringing it forward. If there's a project that needs money right away, we've brought it forward as a motion to the town council and they've approved it.
Right.
I have another column here, SIP, right here. And my thought is, what we don't bring to the town council and say, let's do this, we put it in the SIP and then the entire town votes on it.
Okay.
So an example of SIP would, Gales Ferry corridor study doesn't have to be done in a hurry. We can put it in the SIP and say, let's put that money there from ARPA. It's funded. People vote on the budget as a whole. Do they get to say, no, I don't want to do a corridor study, but yes, I want a regional water interconnection? No, they don't. But that was kind of the thinking we've been using, is we put as much as we can in the SIP and the rest we have to recommend to the town council. And I think the window to do that is coming up very quickly. When we have our budget sessions and we look at the SIP, I think that's when we decide on this column here, what actually goes in the SIP and what doesn't.
Okay. Another question. While you're there at the Gales Ferry corridor study, what exactly is that? And does that include studying whether they should get, or how much it's going to cost for sewer? Can you explain that to me?
Mayor, I can speculate. I don't have any hard facts.
Yeah, the corridor study is, it's something to determine feasibility of street type, like streetscape improvements. So really it comes down to like the steep grant that was conducted in Ledyard Center. They wanted to see that we had studied this Ledyard Center corridor and had it up to date in terms of walkability, shopping, street lighting, those types of things. So the same is true here. This wouldn't really pertain to bringing public sewer either from Norwich or Groton, which is a monumental task. It's more of a topical type of thing. So like I said, the street lights, maybe decorative street lights and sidewalks, and if it's stone walls and landscaping, that's primarily what's involved. But the STEEP grant from the state of Connecticut requires us to have an updated one to be able to apply.
Okay.
So the last time we applied for the STEEP grant for Gales Ferry, we were turned down because our study was stale.
As I recall, it was short on detail. And
Yeah.
then didn't we apply for a grant for the 15,000 to do the corridor study? And I think we did not get that grant. Am I right?
Yes, we also
Yeah.
applied for that and didn't get that too.
Okay, thank you. I was gonna say, I thought the council took action on that study, but you're reminding me, it was the grant.
Yeah, it was a grant
And
application.
that was before, well, it must have been when the last council was seated.
It was.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, both of you,
welcome.
all of you.
Okay, that's all I have. Guys ready to adjourn?
Oh, I would love to adjourn.
Me too. All right. Motion to adjourn.
Do we need a second?
Adjourned without exception.
Matter.
6:21 PM. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good night.